Okay, so, oh, I got that up. This is what we are starting with, that we already have the code to lay some things out in the grid. What we're going to add here now is some ability to click on these items and do whatever it is you need to do. So I'm going to add it very basic. I'm just going to do some trace statements, but you would be able to add a little bit more and do whatever it is you need to do. So just to remind ourselves where we are, we have our class that has the X position, Y position, width, height, max width, and item count for our grid that lays these things out. And right now we have a function called layout_in_grid that does all our layout with this for loop, which is looping through and adding things there. I'm also, by the way, creating these squares on the fly. That may or may not be something that you want to do. It's often very useful to put things into a MovieClip. So the first thing that we want to do is we just want to add an event listener to each of these MovieClips. So I'm going to show you in this first tutorial here the way to do it by just sort of adding the event listener right here to the clip, and then we're going to look at a way to do it with a custom class. So let's go here, and so just somewhere in here, essentially, after we create this, we want to add our event listener. So here's where we add it to the stage. I'm going to say add event listener. So square dot add event listener, mouse event, click, and I'm going to say on click square. All right, so that is our event listener, and it's going to allow us to respond to the various events. So now that we have an event listener, we also need an event handler. So let's go add that on click square event handler. I'm just going to copy the name so I don't mistype it. All right, so here's our event handlers. We have a private function on click square. All right, and as usual, I'm just going to first trace that event out just to make sure it's working. So there we go. Here's our output, and I click these. Here we go. All right. Oops, sorry. This is nothing to do with my code. Right now I have another piece of code here that I was going to show later that's conflicting with it. Apologies. Let me just fix that. Okay, let's run that again now and see. Okay, so here we go. Here's our comments, and so as we click each one of these, we get an on-click square. Okay, great. So the next part is we actually want to do something with it. So what I want to do for now is I'm just going to trace out the trace out the number that's in the square. So that's in just to remind ourselves here, it's in this text field called num_txt. And I want to do that for each clip. So the first thing you might think is, all right, we're going to trace it's going to be an e.target property. And we can say num_txt.text. All right, so we're saying, okay, whatever we clicked on, go to that, get the num_txt.text, and do it. So I'm going to run here, and then let's see what happens. So I get this. Reference error, property num_txt not found on /txt text field, and there's no default value. Main on click square. So what this is saying is that it didn't find this property we're looking for in this object, which is a text field. And I know it's supposed to be a MovieClip. So what's happening here is that sometimes if the thing you're clicking on inside a MovieClip can accept events itself, it is actually the target of the click when you just do event.target. So there's another property, an event, that you can use in this case, and this is often the first thing I try if the target isn't quite what I'm thinking it is. So it's event.current target, right? So current target is the actual object that's running the code of on-click square in this case. Not on-click square, sorry, the actual sort of the main object. So let's look at that here. And so there we go. Now we're getting 8, 4, 2, 12, and so forth. All right, so now we're getting what we expect to get. So that's the basic, simple way that we can add some interactivity to it. And actually, I'm going to move on and show you another way to do the same thing. I think it's actually going to be better to do it in the same screencast than in another one. So this is one way, is just adding everything right in the same place. I added my event listener here when I was adding the square clip, and added the event handler at that point. All right. This other way to do it will require a little more code, but it does, in some cases, give you some more options as to what you can do. So I'll just show that quickly and move on. So let's make open a new class here, and I'll open this one called square clip. So what I'm doing is I made a new class based on, let's go to our library again here, my linkage here, right? So this is exporting square clip, so I'm making a square clip class, and that is going to be the class for all of our square clips. And I'm actually going to comment out now, adding that event listener. So let's just make sure that that isn't working. That's so we don't get anything, right? So I'm nothing when I'm clicking here. Okay, and now we're going to add all that stuff through our square clip here. Okay, so it's relatively easy. Basically, I can just take that code, that add event listener, and just not copy the square part of it, and put it on that constructor function here. So we're saying, okay, add an event listener, mouse event click on square, and I can also take this code here, and I'm actually going to comment that out now just to make sure it's not there, and put that event handler in here. Okay, so if you were following along, I'll give you you should have the square clip blank as well, that you can just sort of copy and paste these in. And now let's see if that works. And it's now saying, instead of saying e.currentTarget, by the way, I can just say num.txt.text, because this class is right on the square clip MovieClip, so it has access to all the instances inside of square clip directly. So let's run this now again. So here we go, and so there it is. All right, so this is one way to do it, which it's a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It depends on what you're more comfortable with. Also depends on how complicated your code is getting and how long things are going to get. One of the nice pieces about this is that it puts off a lot of the code for the square clip in here. However, what it means is that square clip now doesn't have access to any other methods and properties of main without going through the process we saw earlier of creating a link between main and square clip, or using public properties and methods of main. So sometimes it can be easier to do it all in main as we did at first by just adding it here, especially if the code that you want to work with here is going to deal with some of the other properties and things inside of main. If it's not, and it's all sort of self-contained within square clip, like this is right here so far, then it can be a little bit easier to do there, because now you notice main has a lot less code in it. I just say new square clip, add child, and then I don't have to have the event listener or the event handler for that inside of main. All right, so those are two ways to do it. I'll add one more piece here, which is the next thing to think about is, when you're doing this, is whether you need to store any information in the object, and that can do some different things as well. So whether you need to store information in the object, if you need to store a lot of information in the object, sometimes it can be easier to make a separate properties and things in this square clip class. That's another thing to think about.